Thank you.
Are these live?
Oh, they are. They are. They are.
Good morning and afternoon. Are you guys having fun? Did you have fun the last few days? So thank you to James and the team for putting this together. It's super awesome. A few of us have been here a few times, so it's really cool to come back. My name is Mary Galloway. I am the CEO and a founding board member for the Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu. We do hands-on training for women and girls in cybersecurity all around the US and some international stuff. So hopefully we can do something here soon. I'm also a sales engineer for a major cybersecurity vendor based out of San Francisco. And I will let these ladies introduce themselves. Marcelle?
Hi, everybody. I'm Marcelle Lee. You might have seen me yesterday in the CTF for Beginners workshop. Thanks for people who came out for that. So I am the lead for cyber threat research and operations for a global data center company that I guarantee your traffic touches all the time. And I'm also on the board of directors for the Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu. And yeah, this is my second time at B-Sides Cayman Islands, and we came back because we love this. It's a great group and surprisingly diverse, like very refreshing. So.
Hi, I'm Carlota Sage. I'm a virtual CISO. I have my own company that I just started called Pocket CISO. I was on the board of directors of the Diana Initiative. I've stepped back from that. I'm also an instructor with gracie.org, GRCIE, Governance, Risk, and Compliance for the Intelligence Ecosystem. And I am I'm an entrepreneur now. I didn't mean to be. I have a large background in enterprise IT, but I fell into fractional or virtual CISO work a few years ago, and I've really been loving that. I gave the workshop on Wednesday on So You Want to Be a CISO. So if you think you might want to be a CISO, give me a chance to talk you out of that. And if you still want to be a CISO, I will give you all of the tools that I can.
Thank you.
My name is Alexandra Forssell. I'm a director at Risk Advisory Practice here in Deloitte on the Cayman Islands. Been here for 14 years, 13 of them with Deloitte. And I have my background as the software engineer originally, and then I got my PhD in cybersecurity. My research focus is normally on the financial services adopting the cybersecurity frameworks and the cybersecurity policy and regulations. And also I really passionate about cyber in general and really like speaking about cyber. And I lead our cybersecurity practice for cyber and cyber women for the Caribbean region for Deloitte. And as part of my work, yes, we talk about diversity. We have very diverse practice, so we cannot just focus on one thing. We do like incident response and cybersecurity policy and everything. So I can talk a lot about it. With that said, I will let Pam talk about herself.
So morning, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the conference. My name is Pamela Greene, and I work for the Cayman Islands government. And my title is Chief Information Security Officer, so CISO. And I've been in this role about 4 years now. And prior to that, the very beginning of my career, I started in software development. And my, how things have changed when they talk about things like Chat GPT and that being able to generate code. Well, I must say I'm delighted that I left software development all those years ago, and I've done most of the jobs along the system development lifecycle, everything from business analysis, systems analysis, right through to sort of program director and auditing in cybersecurity. And now in this role, worked for telecoms companies and across a number of other fields, global system integrators. And like the rest of the panel members, I'm delighted to be here. I'm passionate about inclusion and diversity, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Awesome. So real quick, if you have questions, just raise your hand. There will be time for those questions. We will be done by 11, so the next speaker can come on and do their thing. So let's just jump right in. So Carlota, what steps can companies take to attract a diverse pool of candidates?
I think they really need to believe in it. And I think what we saw in the US in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement is you saw a lot of companies jump on board and create diversity and inclusion initiatives and positions and that sort of thing. But I think what was kind of buried underneath, because BLM was and George Floyd were such big headlines at the time, At that same time, Forbes had come out with a bunch of, and several business magazines came out with a bunch of research saying that companies that had diverse leadership and diverse boards performed significantly better than companies that did not. And I think that those two things kind of hit at the same time. And for a large enterprise, it's very easy, I think, to create those spaces. It's much harder for those small organizations, for those mom and pop stores, those sub 100 person companies, which is the majority of the companies that maybe aren't hiring security people necessarily right now, but will be in time. So somebody has to believe in it. If it's a small organization, the top has to believe in it. If it's a large organization, you can do a much more grassroots movement.
Okay. How does that look here in the Cayman Islands? What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate here in the Cayman Islands that our diversity and inclusion is really baked into the way that we recruit. So that's not to say that more couldn't be done, but I do think we're very fortunate here. And to echo what's said earlier, it's important for business, and there are many studies that demonstrate that. I'm talking about jurisdictions outside of the Cayman, that where diversity and inclusion is something that's valued and driven through the organization performs better. There are positive and tangible outcomes. But ultimately, it's about getting the best person for the job. And so I look forward to a day when we don't have to talk about it in these terms. And like I said, certainly for the Cayman Islands, I see a lot of diversity and I see a lot of inclusion. More still to be done, I believe, and especially in cybersecurity.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of, oh, sorry, you go. No, you.
You agree with Pam. I think when we look at the workforce, we see the diversity both on gender level and on cultural level, that we're a very multicultural society. And as you were saying, the diversity definitely brings different perspectives to the table, and that helps organizations to be more resilient in the end. I think one area that we could do better in is the education and educating, for instance, young women that cybersecurity is the profession that they could be looking at. Not just going into the kind of standard path of going to law or going to accounting, but also considering different paths that can lead to cybersecurity. Okay, for instance, we did a study as part of our Women in Cyber initiatives, and we have people from very different educational backgrounds. We have law enforcement, we have business, we have even anthropologists as part of our Women in the Cyber board, and all those options are valid.
As you drink.
So I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that I've observed in my career, and I am a career changer. I did not do cybersecurity before, so I came into this kind of totally from another field altogether, nothing to do with tech. So I've had the opportunity to kind of really look at this from the outside in, as well as be now inside it. And one of the main issues that I see with hiring for really lots of different companies is the job postings that we put out there. It's been studied over and over again that women are much less likely to apply for a job if there's this long list of qualifications that are required, and they don't meet all of them. And I think we all know most job postings, like it's a wish list, right? You hope you might find that purple squirrel that has all those things, but they really probably don't actually exist. But that's a big deterrent for women. They will just pass that job right by. So I have observed a trend with companies changing how they write their job postings, and that's a really good thing. But that would be the first thing I would tell companies to look at is, what do your job postings look like?
That absolutely works. Yeah. We came across that side, and we did the experiment 2 years ago when we adjusted our job ads specifically for cyber professionals in the Caribbean region to have to revert that in the way that there is mandatory requirements to less, and then there are something that is good, but the way it's worded, you can apply it as an extra. And we have seen a huge uptake in the applications from women.
That's
and
awesome.
we actually ended up hiring really good professionals out of it.
I like that. So now that we've attracted these people, how can companies and organizations, and from the individual as well, how can we create a culture that supports this diversity and inclusion and make everyone that's in the organization feel a part of the conversation?
So I have a quick word on
I
that
would
one,
think so.
and it kind of goes back to the job posting thing. But so a lot of companies, like in the tech cyberspace, will advertise or talk about their culture as being like foosball and
Mhm.
Nerf guns and all that kind of stuff. When I read something like that, or I hear that's what a company's like, or they say, you know, on their career page, oh, we have all these things. I'm like, I do not want to work there because that's not my thing. I'm sorry, I really don't like Nerf guns all that much.
Right.
I'm likely to just be hit by the things. And but yeah, so the culture is a huge thing. And I get a little tripped up when people talk about, you know, we want to hire somebody that matches the culture of our, you know, our group or whatever. But if your group is all like the same basic people, right, then your culture is very specific to them, and
Mhm.
you're not going to be letting in, you know, these diverse groups that you want. So
I mean, my take on it is that it all starts with education. For instance, when people throw around terms like diversity, inclusion, unconscious bias, we've all got our own ideas about what those words actually mean, but we need to be on the same page with what they actually mean and what's the breadth of it and what's the scope. And, you know, like I say, with all cultural changes, it starts with education, then awareness, then, you know, promoting it, championing it, leading by example as an organization and showing that, you know, as I said, it's part and parcel of how we operate and how we get the best out of people once we attract them, which is a difficult thing in cybersecurity. But then how do we keep them and how do we continue to evolve our culture so that it stays fresh and alive? Because some cultures are there and values that an organization have, but over time it needs to change.
One word in your question is that I wanted to highlight is equity. And equity versus equality. I was right here in this room exactly 2 weeks ago when Honorable Andre Banks was giving his speech in support of the International Women's Day, International Women's Month. And the discussion was around the difference between those two concepts. And when it comes to diversity, it's very important to understand that although we can create opportunities that would be equal for different groups and different people, that may not be enough. What we need to do is to support equity by propping those that had different start, because sometimes we have different starting point.
Right.
So to get to the same place, we need more help.
How does that look from smaller businesses?
It's a lot of self-advocacy, right? I've done a lot of startups. I think the largest company I worked for was Netflix, and that was a miserable experience. I really like the sub 300 person companies, but at that point, like the first startup I ever worked for, I found out that I was not making anywhere near what I should have been. And I had to go to a VP and say, look, I'm going to file an equal opportunity, the EEOC complaint if this is not addressed. And in the US, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they don't just let you fill in a form and file a complaint. You have to go through 2 or 3 interviews, and then they give you the form to come. Okay, we think you have a viable complaint. They triage very hard. So I knew the risk there was that I'm not going to get what I want, and I'm going to be out of a job. And you have to, as an individual, be comfortable with that. As it turned out, HR flew out from California to North Carolina and investigated, and then by the end of the week, I had a 30% raise. Wow. So you have to be willing to suffer the consequences, you know, that could have gone. And it did go very badly because my manager was not really happy about that and basically made my life a living hell after that, right? So there's a certain amount of, I have to advocate for myself, but I have to protect myself at the same time. And you have to decide where you're going to fall on that spectrum.
Nice. So I work for a company, and one of the things that we do is we do employee network groups. So we have employee network groups for women, for vets, for people that are neurodiverse, for the Asian culture, the Black culture, LGBTQ. And so that gives those groups of folks a space. I also work for a company that's got like 80,000 people in it too, across the world. So that's something else that can be done even on a smaller scale as your company starts to grow and build and things like that. You can start to think about creating these spaces for them to come in and have conversation, do activities, do events, get the education that they need. You know what I'm saying? So that's a good point. Thank you. Pam, in your role, what challenges have you faced, if any, when hiring, building the diverse workforce from the government perspective, and how have you guys addressed that?
Okay, so working for government, it's been absolutely fantastic, actually. I think that certainly as a hiring manager, you're empowered, and you're able to yourself, take the lead on ensuring that, you can hire the right people with the right skills. And it's not always down to them having a formal education. You have to be prepared to find the right candidate, somebody that you can retrain, and you have to provide those retraining opportunities. And I've done a lot of work around internships around cybersecurity, and it's been wonderful. I've taken on a mix of females and males and 50-50 on that front, and people who weren't actually interested in cybersecurity, more interested in an internship. But treating everybody as an individual and providing them with the opportunities has led to great outcomes. And when we talk about work experience, we always talk about it in terms of internships and 16 to early 20s. We need to provide work experience opportunities for older people who want to transition into a career. We need to work much more closely with grassroots organizations who are doing great things, like here in the Cayman Islands, SciFec are doing great things. There are code academies, also entry-level roles and alternative ways of assessing people. It's not always down to having formal education and the academic qualification, because when truth be told, we're all on a journey of continuous learning, and we can acquire what we need to acquire for that job while we're in the job working. But like I said, it's been fantastic working for the Cayman Islands government. I feel very empowered to do the things that I've done, and there are no barriers. So.
Awesome. So that comes from the newer folks, but how do we address the issues for career changers, for folks that are, mid-career looking to change, transition? What are your thoughts, Marcelle, Carlota?
Well, I was an intern when I did my transition.
There you go.
Probably the oldest intern ever. But yeah, being open to, looking at people, candidates like that, someone who looks like me and is a little older. I'm not going to say how old, some people might know. But yeah, just be open to exploring these possibilities of bringing in folks that aren't traditional, in your mind. Another thing that I see a lot of in the States is requirements for like a 4-year degree. I will tell you that there's many jobs in cybersecurity that do not require a 4-year degree,
Never.
or they shouldn't require a 4-year degree.
It's never a requirement. Yeah.
And not that we're both college professors, so I'm not knocking that, but yeah, just being open to having people come in from different backgrounds and that sort of thing.
And for my part, I made a conscious decision. I had a very unusual kind of path into cybersecurity myself. On one hand, I'm a college dropout, and on the other hand, I have a master's degree from Columbia. I did go back to school, so I grew up very poor. So I'm very attuned to opportunities, and the fact that I had to make a lot of opportunities for myself. So I was in enterprise IT for many years. I ended up at a little startup called FireEye in 2013, and they were about 300 people because I love that space. And by the end of the year, they were 1,100 people, and then they bought Mandiant, and they were 2,000 plus people. It was within the span of a year. You went from 300 person org to a 2,000 plus, I think almost 2,500 person org. And I was able to kind of create little opportunities for myself within that. I was the platform admin for the communities. I was the technical platform admin for the communities and content management systems. And the person they hired to run the communities was neither technical nor interested in security, and he was failing fundamentally our communities. And I started answering questions in the communities, and I took them over. That's how I got into security, right? And I got very addicted to helping I helped hundreds of security teams across the globe solve problems, and I got addicted to that. But there was no other opportunity. There were no other community manager roles at the time in cybersecurity vendors that I could grow into or move into to further my career. So I had to make my own opportunities. And I think that you have to, wherever you are, it's always going to be easier if you're working for a hospital, for example, see if somebody in the security team will mentor you, right? Try to use the connections you have to create opportunities for yourself.
And also for especially in the Cayman Islands, where you have two major industries, tourism and financial services. And sometimes what I see as a limiting factor for professionals is lack of knowledge in particular industries. So for instance, someone can be intimidated to go and work in security financial services because they may understand the technical side, but may not understand the industry specifics. So I co-chair mid-career for 100 Women Finance, and that's one of the areas that we are looking at. It's helping in our case, women to transition between different industries to get them to close that gap so that they can work in the same area but in different industry.
Nice.
Yeah, I was just thinking about my last job was for, as security services provider, and we put on an annual threat intel summit for customers and really anybody who wants to come. It's secure work, so I definitely recommend checking out that threat intel summit that they do. It's very good, even though I'm not there anymore. But we always had a cyber competition for the participants, and I had the idea, I'm like, let's open up this cyber competition, run it internally for the entire organization. And it was such an amazing thing because, we had people from finance and HR and sales, all these different teams who really didn't know much at all about the technical aspects of cybersecurity, right? And so people just loved doing this cyber competition. We would do weekly walkthroughs of how to solve things. A lot of people got in trouble with IT for downloading stuff on their computers. Didn't think about that one. But it was just a great way to expose the broader audience of a company to, what we actually do in cybersecurity. So highly recommend that.
I like that idea. So that plays into what managers and leaders can do. So what are some things that the folks that are in those types of positions, in those leadership roles, what can they do to make sure that they're trying to maintain this diverse group and they're not looking into their own unconscious bias to not hire or not bring folks in? What can they do to help maintain that? We can start down here at this end.
I think one of the underrepresented groups, are, and when the truth be told, our workforce needs to represent our culture, our society that we're in, the communities that we're in, and nobody should be left behind. I think neurodiverse groups are left behind currently, and it's actually that is the skill set that fits very well with cybersecurity. It's people that think differently and who probably think like the cyber adversaries. So that's a group I think is underrepresented, and more can be done there. Whether we need to go as far as affirmative action to neurodiverse groups, I'm not sure we need to go that far, but I think our managers can take the lead, and I certainly will be taking the lead and providing opportunities for people with special needs. So thank you.
And I'm going to jump back in here because I have a quote from Linton Wells. Linton Wells III was the former CIO of the DoD in the US. And he's also he's a volunteer at a hacker conference every summer and has been for almost 30 years. He's a well-seasoned gentleman. And I asked him, Lynn, he's one of my mentors and I adore him, but I said, Lynn, what would drive a Navy guy, a DoD guy to a hacker conference? Especially in the early 90s. And he said, I understood that diversity of thought is key to protecting our country. And I can't wait for that diversity to come to me. I have to go out and bring it to me. I have to make them want to work with me. And I think that from a leadership perspective is 100% what leaders need to do. I think, Pam, you've exemplified that in many ways.
Thank you.
I think to kind of generalize what was Pam was saying, I think we need to, as leaders, we can build a culture that will focus on individual strength and not the gaps, and recognize and appreciate those individual strengths. Earlier today, Ira was talking about the incident response and the qualities, and a lot of qualities required for incident response are very different from the qualities required for the technical support and from the monitoring, there are different mentality that are required to be there. So different people will be differently suited for different roles, and recognizing those differences and celebrating them, I think it's important for the managers. And as part of our Women in Cyber program, one of the programs that we started doing internally is heart-centered leadership. So we teach those going into cyber more empathy, and also doing the trainings to help the mentality of our professionals to be focused and to create, so that when we are in the stressful situation, we can deal with that situation properly with internal staff, with communications. We talked about the importance of communication yesterday from a legal perspective, another perspective, but to just with any incident response, you need to have the proper mentality. And sometimes, as Pam was saying, different groups are differently suited for that.
Right. You have any thoughts? No?
Not as a spam.
Not as a spam. Okay. So
I got distracted.
All right, so I have one more question that you guys probably have prepared for, but once these folks are in an organization, how can we help them advance in cybersecurity, either in this company that they're going to first or into other companies? Like, what can we do, or what can organizations, companies, nonprofits do to help with career advancement? And that's for me to know, because I'm trying to get to their level right here.
All right, I'm going to jump in on this one. When I started volunteering with GRCIE, grcie.org, we call it Gracie, but there's no A in the domain. I deliberately said, I am better at this point mentoring mid-career women or with people trying to step up in their career. And whether they're transitioning in cybersecurity or already here, my time is best spent developing leadership in the next gen leaders, right? So I think there's partially recognizing that in yourself. I think companies definitely need to stop leaving it to individual managers on how you spend, on whether education and training gets approved, because that has very much worked against, I think, women and underrepresented groups in the past, is that the manager who has to approve that says, well, I don't think you need it. So they don't approve it, right? So I think companies need to be more aggressive in letting the individuals choose their mentors and choose their education, and being willing to fund that. And I think that we as seasoned professionals also need to help the entry level and the transitioners, but we also need to really be developing the leaders as well.
And I would say creating role models as well.
Yes.
And that goes for the mid-career professionals, for young professionals, and to scholarship students, and for the younger folks in the universities. Because sometimes we see that underrepresented groups don't go in a certain profession because they don't see people like them in those professions. They don't see those role models, so they don't think those opportunities are there for them. And highlighting that they are is very important.
Yeah, I was going to add too, like there was actually a campaign that was run over Twitter from a security company a couple of years ago, and it was called "This is what a hacker looks like." And people were encouraged to take pictures of themselves doing sort of not what you would expect the stereotypical hacker to be doing, right? And just being a woman, it fits that category, right? But yeah, so I mean, if you Google female hacker, like you're just not going to get a lot of good
Get
results.
Angelina Jolie from there.
Exactly. You're going to get, a girl with a dragon tattoo and Angelina Jolie, of course, quintessential, and maybe Penelope from NCIS. But there's just not a lot, for a young woman to look for. And you can take out the word woman and insert, any other diverse kind of category. So what Alexandra is saying is just so important to have those role models and those mentors, and just somebody who's actually doing, the thing that these people might want to do. And to be honest, that's why I do a ton of public speaking. It's not because I always wanted to be a public speaker. It's quite the opposite. But I just think it's really important to be that role model and get in front of people and be a technical woman. And so that's what I do. But yeah, spot on.
Pam, do you guys have anything in the government here for helping with that career advancement?
Yeah, I can only speak for my team and my department, but my view of career enhancement, everybody always thinks it's moving up to the next level. But if you look at the way that organizations are structured, everybody can't be a manager. That's just the reality of the situation. But we can all be leaders. We all already are leaders. I tell my people, you're a leader. You can do this. And I get them to go outside of their comfort zone. And I plant that seed in them that they're a leader, because I'm hoping I plant that seed and it will grow into a tree. And one day they will be a leader. And I'm sure of it, because sometimes it only takes a few words and believing in people. So I also think career advancement is about learning about other areas of the organization. You shouldn't spend even if you want to be a cybersecurity CISO, don't spend all of your career in that area. Go and find out about law. Go and find out about project management. Go and find out about marketing. Round yourself off so that when you do become a manager or a director or an executive, you have got all of those skills and you've built them as you're going along in your career. But the key point I want to make is that we're all leaders. We can all be champions for change. It doesn't matter where we are in an organization.
I like that. Some other ways too, I think, is with volunteering. We're heavy volunteers. I've been volunteering with Cyber Jitsu because it's a volunteer role for 10 years at this point. And it gives you a lot of different skills that Pamela was talking about: marketing, business, all of these things, public speaking. So for those of you that are interested in advancing and enhancing your career, volunteer work is a good way to do that as well.
It also builds a network.
And it
If
builds a
you're
network,
if
right.
you're coming from another industry than cybersecurity, volunteering with an organization like Cyber Jitsu or Gracie, those are fantastic. Showing up to your local conferences and your local meetups, it builds your network, right?
Yeah, network is huge in this
Yeah.
industry, as I'm sure you all are aware. But like I can't even remember the last time like I actually like applied for a job. It was because it's always just like, hey, Marcelle, you want to come work for us? I'm like, okay, sure. But yeah, the networking piece is big. And I mean, and my hat is off to the gentlemen who run B-Sides Cayman Islands, because it's a heavy lift to put on a conference like this, for sure. Mary and I know because we put together a conference.
We're planning a conference now.
Yes, we are. Right. We'll take volunteers, by the way, if anybody's interested. Also sponsors. But yeah, so it is a great way to hone your skills and meet sort of like-minded people. And there's many groups out there. It doesn't have to be Cyber Jitsu or Gracie. Find something that works for your personal needs and your organization too. I think it's great for organizations to support these kind of groups too.
Right.
And one quick more thought on that. For the diverse hiring thing, like for example, Cyber Jitsu has a job board. So you can promote your job openings there and you're going to get an audience of,
Of extremely diverse
very
professionals.
diverse. Yes. So, and these are things that people don't even know about or think about sometimes. Right.
Well, and I think coming back to what can companies do, sponsoring these kinds of organizations and these kinds of conferences, you may not see the money out of it, immediately, but you do get a more favorable reputation, I think, and you do get that exposure of, okay, I've sponsored Cyber Jitsu. Now diversity candidates are going to look at me more favorably when they do apply, or when they're considering applying.
Another related area is mentorship.
Yes.
Being a mentor is, first, you can help create that next generation of the cyber professionals that help with recruitment and ultimately with overall security for everyone. And it's mentoring is very rewarding for both mentee and mentor.
Yes.
You build that relationship and you build that accountability.
Right. So final thoughts. I'd like to know what's the top of mind for all of you today as it relates to security, an inclusive workforce, and partnering with organizations. We'll start in the middle and then go out to the outside. You can start first.
To me, one focus is equity.
Okay.
So refocusing on that and making sure that we have that prop for underrepresented professionals in the community. And another is looking broader at diversity. So not just gender, race, nationality, but neurodiversity and temperament, for instance, making sure that someone who's an introvert has equal opportunities and can build a successful career.
Okay, Marcelle?
Yeah, and I think the thing that is kind of top of mind for me is that it's not enough for an organization to have like, oh, I've hired a woman on this team, my job here is done, right? Because then it really puts all the pressure on that person to represent, an entire gender or race or whatever, right? So just like don't stop at that first one, and I see that all the time. The other thing that I also observe is, the company where I work is like 15,000 employees, and our diversity, inclusion, equity game is very strong. But when I look around just InfoSec, the team, like it's not represented there. So I think it's on the leadership of these groups to make sure that those initiatives are carrying through into their departments as well, because it doesn't just naturally flow sometimes.
Pam?
Yeah, and my final thought is that, we work together across public and private sector to build a pipeline of cyber talent to defend our nation from now and into the future, because the demand is there. And, the extent to which I can play a role in that, I certainly will, and I'll be the leader in that.
Awesome. And Carlota?
Everything. It's all on my mind. Equity, advocacy, burnout, and community, I think in that order, because I left my last job and I loved my last job. But I was handling 8 clients. I was the CISO for 8 small companies. I was handling sales. I was coaching the senior analyst. I was coaching the junior analyst. And then my boss expected me to build out my own proposal with no equity, right? And I was just like, okay, no, I'm not doing that. And I quit. And I started Pocket CISO to build out my own thing. And then I realized I am too burnt out to move. So I literally incorporated my company in November and then just couldn't do anything for 3 months because it's the holidays, nobody's doing anything anyway. So it's kind of the perfect time. But it was also, maybe I just need some time off. So I took my time off and I came back and I was still feeling very burnt out. And I leaned on my community, because I'm a one-woman show. I really needed my community to cheer me on, and I really appreciate everyone who's gone like, "That's a great idea. You need to stay focused on that. I know you're burnt out. Take a little more time." Right. So those things: equity, advocacy, burnout, and community. Like you're going to face all of those challenges in your career, whether you're in cybersecurity or not.
Nice. So we could talk about this topic for hours, days, whatever it is.
We'll be here all day. So.
Over drinks, but but I want to thank all of these ladies here for jumping on and just having the conversation. If you all have any questions, feel free to ask. Yes, yeah. Perfect.
Mary?
Yes.
Mary, can we ask, everyone has their notepads in front of them.
Yes.
Can we ask everyone to take second and write one thing that they can personally do to support
what she
diversity.
said. Write down what you can do to support
like
diversity and inclusion on your pad.
Right.
If you haven't already written it down.
And there's a quiz.
Things already written about they can do that.
Good morning, and I am really pleased to see this interjection into this whole seminar this week in terms of the diversity that's up there and women that are up there. This is truly pleasing. And I'm totally in line. I've taken education, and I'm more so pointing my question to Ms. Pam Greene. The Diversity in Tech 2021 states that in the US, 68% of business leaders believe there is a lack of diversity in the IT world, and that is a problem. My question, and I'm totally with you in terms of education in the field. I was exposed recently in the last 2 weeks to an awesome program that is being done, has been embarked just this year at the UCCI, University of the Cayman Islands, where I was placed at the IT table because I've been in the IT field for over 25 years. And there, it was only one female among the group of over 10 gentlemen. So my question is really, how deliberate are we in terms of moving towards diversity for females in the industry. And with the government being one of the largest leaders, employment agencies, yeah, how are we gearing towards that? So are we being deliberate? Are we incorporating programs that are out there to try and promote, to bring in female? And I'm loving what was shared earlier, that we must do promotion. We must have more of this forum so our females can see what the leaders are currently doing and where they too can look to aspire. Because again, with the hospitality, the reverse was there. The hospitality table, one male and all female. We need to change that complex.
Thank you for that question. I completely agree with you. I think statistics from the US is not the same as what's going on here. So if it's 60% of leaders in the US feel there's not enough diversity, I don't think that's the same here. But you did hit upon a good point, is that we need to know as a baseline, what is that statistic here? So when I looked into that back in 2021, actually, you know, we are ahead of the US and other jurisdictions in terms of, for instance, the number of women that work.
Yeah.
And also behind slightly, but the number of women in technology. So it's about making sure that those women, you know, be counted. They stand up. They show the young ladies and the young guys that, you know, technology, certainly cybersecurity, is very diverse here in the Cayman. There are opportunities for you. But seeing is believing, as you said. So, I mean, it's difficult to know at any one time all of the different panels and discussions that are going on. But anytime I'm invited to speak to young people, I take that opportunity, because for me, young people are the future. They're the leaders of tomorrow. And we must invest time in it. And I do that on a personal level. So, yeah.
I think there's also a perception issue, right? Because especially women and underrepresented groups, we become very good communicators to get into these roles. And once you're a good communicator, you're no longer considered technical, even if you are deeply technical. A lot of times, as a woman especially, you're going to be pushed more into marketing in an enterprise organization. FireEye for years tried to move me into marketing. And I refused, because that's not the path I wanted to take. And I think that especially in Silicon Valley, and I imagine to a lesser degree here, but there's going to always be an undercurrent of, oh, you're not a developer, so you're not deeply technical. And that's just not true. You know, your developer is technical in a different way from your systems administrator, right? Your network admin who writes batch scripts for things is technical in a different way from your front-end developer, right? And conversely, similarly, I should say, anyone who's communicating those technical concepts and organizing that and running that program, like your CISOs, we're still technical. You know, we still have those technical chops, but because we're now program managers or leaders, we're not the technical ones anymore, and we're not the ones that they're inviting necessarily to the table.
Cool. Another question.
Good morning. I'm so pleased to be here listening to your extraordinary women. As a member of Gender Equality Cayman, you know, we promote diversity in the workplace. But I believe it comes down to what Pam mentioned a few minutes ago about education, educating people. What is diversity? So I'm sitting here, one might say, you know what, this isn't a diverse panel because there's no male.
That's true. Yeah,
right?
very true.
So that person is attributing diversity to gender.
Yeah.
But from my opinion, it's very diverse. I'm seeing different race, persons from different background and so forth. So my question is, what is more important to you? Hiring a diverse workforce or hiring the right person for the job?
They shouldn't be mutually exclusive.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I want to hire the right person for the job, but I also want to make sure that I have a diverse team. And like I said, you can do both at the same time for sure.
It should be one and the same, because cybersecurity, there are different jobs and there would be very different people required for each of those jobs. So if you hire based on those jobs, then you will end up with diversity by itself. It just may be diversity in different aspects.
We're not saying don't hire men. We're just saying look at everyone and pick the
Right.
best person from that group,
Right.
whether that's a female, somebody that's Black or Asian or, from the UK or whatever it is. You can find the right person in that group as well.
Right.
Although, I mean, can you find the right person? Are you looking in the right places? That's
That
the other
part.
thing too, right? So if you're kind of have a narrow pool, then that's going to have an impact on what
Right.
that looks like for you.
And I think it speaks to the pipeline issue, right? If only I'm getting white males for candidates, I'm going to end up, I can only hold the job open so long to look for a diversity candidate to see if they are as good or better, right? At some point, business has to keep moving. But if you're in that situation where you don't have that pipeline, then you should, as a leader in your community or a leader in your organization, you should be going out and creating that pipeline. And maybe you won't get the benefit of it in the next 5 years, maybe not in the next 20. Maybe you're going to elementary schools and trying to create that pipeline there, but you still need to be contributing to it if you're not seeing a diverse candidate pool.
All right. Are there any final questions? Cool. Oh,
All right,
there's
we're
one
out of
over
time.
there.
Yep.
I see her.
All right. Technically, our time's up, but can we take one more? Well,
We've got 2
we can
minutes.
get the red screen down here.
Oh.
All right, time's up for speaking. I think we can still take the question.
So 10:55.
You
All right.
you were deprived of a few minutes, so I think you're okay. I just wanted to say this may come into your support bucket, but what role do you see for, shall we say, employment benefits in terms of promoting diversity and inclusivity?
That's a good one. At least in the States, I think one of the employment benefits is having insurance coverage for like same-sex partners, for example. And I don't know how it works here, I apologize, but that's not a given necessarily in the States. Supporting, paying for the cost for like, say, gender reassignment surgery, that's, something that's going to draw, granted, maybe a narrow pool of candidates, but it's going to make generally candidates possibly feel better about your organization. Those are two that come to mind right away. I don't know if you
I
all.
think education, having the
Right.
ability to either have your education reimbursed or paid for. I worked at General Dynamics and they gave us $12,000 a year to go to school every
Nice.
year.
Very nice.
So, I mean,
I
that
think
was definitely something that drew me in because I wanted to go to school.
Yeah, and I think for the US, the remote work is huge because
Yeah.
so many underrepresented groups, women, diversity candidates, whatever, if we can work remotely and have a more flexible schedule, we can support our family and our community better. And I'm not having to choose between, do I want to stay near family and community or do I want to take a job in Boston? And that's a very specific example for a reason. But and part of my disagreement with my former company, and again, love the company, absolutely would recommend anyone go work for them, but senior leaders were allowed to be remote. But anyone who was not a virtual CISO had to be in that Boston area office. And I think that's a control issue, right? I get that you want to see butts and seats. There are leaders who honestly feel like you can't create a effective remote workforce. It takes a different focus. It takes a different level of energy. And I get it's not as spontaneous. It's more intentional. So I think remote work is huge for underrepresented groups and just
yeah,
huge.
And general flexibility.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to say about flexibility, it needs to be done right. So, for instance, if we talk about working mothers, flexibility is a good thing because you can pick up your child something, but it's also important not to create a stereotype of a bias because someone has children. It doesn't mean that this person will be less available or will have less time and therefore will be less promoted because they're expected to have more time.
Yeah.
And especially in cyber, I would say, because we're dealing with incident response. Incidents don't work 9 to 5.
They do not. In fact, I think they prefer to not work 9 to 5.
And another related thing is the maternity leave and they have flexibility around that as well. Technically, I'm on maternity leave right now. But I'm here.
Paternity leave too is a good thing.
And
because
paternity
dads
leave is
need
very
time off
helpful.
as well.
Yeah.
Pam, what are your thoughts?
Nothing further to add.
All right, so that's all the time we have right now. Please connect with all of us. I know I'm on LinkedIn, they're on
Definitely.
LinkedIn. Are you guys on LinkedIn too?
Yes.
Yes.
Connect with all of us via LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever other social medias. And if you have more questions, feel free to ask.
After.
We'll go out in the hallway.
Let's give them a big round of applause if we can. Thank you very much.